Welcome back to the two-part episode. We're going to finish this up strong. We're going to be talking about the next generation. We're going to be talking about how we're raising our kids, the conversations we're going to have with them, and what we want that generation to look like. JT, welcome back, sir.
Man, thank you for having me back, bro.
Yeah, man. So we talked about a lot of things in the first
Yeah,
part.
we did. It got kind of heavy real quick.
Yeah, man. And this is going to be no exception to that because, we're talking about our kids, man.
Whew.
We're talking about our kids. There's just so much that changes about how you approach your life once you become a parent.
Everything changes. Every decision you make is no longer just about you.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a complete shift in mind, like a mindset.
Yeah.
And man, I do anything for my kids, and I know you would too. What has it been like being a Black father?
Man, at first, it's like any parent. It's a great experience. You're all, I'm going to give my child the world and nothing bad is ever going to happen to them. And I'm going to make sure I'm there for everything and they're going to have everything that they want. And then reality starts to set in.
Yeah.
And, you start to realize that, everything isn't perfect. And I mean, you're literally not going to be able to protect your child from everything. The only thing you can do is prepare them and hope that they learn and they're never in a situation where something bad could happen to them.
Yeah, man. I just think that for me, I just want to be there for them.
Right.
You know what I mean? I just want to be there for them through the good, the bad, the ugly. I just want to take this stereotype away that, we're not there for our kids, because I think that's just like a thing that a lot of people think about Black dads, that, we're not involved with the kids and, that type of thing. And I just want to, have you and Jalen and some of these other great fathers on this to let people know that, that's not the reality.
It's not
the reality. I would do anything for my kids. And like I said, I just want to be the best parental figure that I can be. And that's tough, especially in this scary world, like everything that we're dealing with. We're in the middle of a pandemic right now. You've got rioting, you got looting, you've got just so many, just dangerous things that, like you said, we can't protect them from, but all we can do is just raise them to the best of our ability. So, yeah. So let's just talk about what are some of these conversations that we're going to have with our kids, with them being, African American or biracial.
Man, I'll say this, and you can probably attest to, man. Having daughters. Man, the first conversation you ever really were just afraid of having was the birds and the bees talk. Like, I'm still preparing for that. Yeah. And my daughter's only 2. Like, I'm still like, how am I going to have this conversation? We're at that age now where she's starting to recognize body parts. So I'm like, even now, like, okay, what do we call that area?
Yeah.
Things like that. And dude, again, we have girls. It is,
yeah. And it's crazy how quickly you jump to the future.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's crazy how quickly, like, you're already planning what they're going to be doing for job, career / what they're going to major in, what, what friends are they going to have? Yeah, man, I'm just trying to stay locked into the moment and trying not to think about the future so much, because it's a scary thing to think about.
And that's the thing,
15,
man.
16-year-old girls walking around.
And that's the thing. It's scary because, one, being 15, 16 now is nothing at all like what it was when we were 15, 16.
Come on, bro. We grew up with house phones. we grew up with Nokia bricks.
Man.
We grew up with no TiVo, no Hulu, no Netflix. There was just a lot less distractions. People use their imaginations more.
Yeah, dude.
played outside. It's going to be a completely different world to navigate.
I mean, they're even being, introduced to things that we weren't introduced to until college,
Dude.
And yes. I'm like, so when my daughter turns 15, 16, what is it going to be like then? Like, how much more information is going to be out there?
It's scary, man. It's scary.
It is terrifying.
It's a unique situation to be like a young parent, because I grapple with the fact that I'm bringing this life into the world, and once they're in that 0 to 6 month phase, and they're crying and you're losing sleep, you're like, man, it'll just be a lot easier once they get a little bit older.
Right.
But one thing that I've been just like really struggling with is just like, we're in this, prime time in our lives when we're in our later 20s, and, I'll be 30 this year. So that just means that, our parents are getting older.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like I'm struggling with raising the next generation, and then also trying to spend as much time with my parents as possible, because I mean, it's scary to think about, one day talking about your parents like in the past tense.
Dude.
You know what I mean?
I still struggle with that today. Like, I don't know what I'm going to, I say I don't know what I'm going to do, but my mom has raised me well enough. Yeah. And I know whenever that time comes, God forbid it's no time soon.
Yeah.
But, I'll, she's raised me well enough, I'll be able to handle it. But still, you don't want to think about that.
Yeah.
And then like you said, you bring in life. And now, not only are you worrying about that because you finally came to your senses and realized how important your parents are.
Yeah.
Now you have children on your own, and you're trying to think about all the lessons that they tried to teach you, and some of them that you kind of just brushed off. And now you're going back to them like, hey, Mom, you remember when you told me this when I was 15? Okay, well, now it's happening with my kid. Can you help me out here?
Exactly. And I think the biggest thing that I realize is like, when my daughter is the age that we are now, late 20s, mid 20s, we're going to have elderly parents, like extremely elderly parents, you know what I mean? So, I think I've just been a lot more intentional with the time. Like, I want to go fishing with my dad. If he wants me to come over, if my parents want me to come over for something, I'm making time for that. And it's just like, we already talked about the shift from being selfish. When you have a kid, that all goes away. But it's almost like, I'm a kid again, because I just crave that attention and that time with my parents, man. So, I think you just look at 24 hours in a day a lot differently when you become a parent, man. And, it's been a ride this far. So,
yeah. And like I said, I know we try not to think about it, but those conversations, like I said, it's the birds and the bees, and what are you going to do with your life? Those conversations, you're trying to figure out now, how am I going to approach that? And it wasn't until this year that my mindset kind of changed. And don't get me wrong, I'm still kind of afraid about, not afraid, but I'm still cautious about those conversations and how I'm going to have them. But the one that's in front of my head now is, I have a black daughter. I'm about to have a black son. And we're about to bring them into this crazy world that's going on right now. And I'm like, man, how do I have that conversation with you? Hey, like you said earlier, I think it was the last episode, hey, God made you perfect.
Yeah.
Exactly who you are. He didn't make any mistakes. But this person doesn't see it that way.
Yeah.
And so now I have to have that conversation with them, and hey, this is what you do if you're ever in contact with the police, or this is what you do if you're ever in a situation where you may be the only black person, or something like that. Like, I never thought that would be a conversation that I would have to think about having.
Yeah.
Like say, you watch movies and you grow up, and I keep going back to the only conversation you really were worried about was the birds and the bees, and how that conversation was going to go. But like, man, this year, 2020 has really opened my eyes. Like, man, I'm going to have to sit down, especially with my son. He's not even here yet. And I'm already thinking, oh man, we're going to have to sit down and have a conversation on what it's like to be a black male and what to do if you're ever encountered by the police.
Yeah. I mean, it's just really interesting because, I don't have a son. I have two daughters. So that'll be a slightly different conversation. But you know, there's still going to be race driven conversations that you have to. I'm gonna have to instill in them that, you know, these people might look at you a little bit differently because you're not like them. So Jalen made a good point that, you know, he's just, the way that he's approaching race was really unique. And I encourage you guys to go back and listen to that episode.
It was a great episode, by the way.
Yeah. Go back and listen to that, and just listen to his take on how he's raising his kids. But yeah, so having a black son, we haven't even talked about, you know, the relationship with the police. So let's just touch on that for a little bit. How were you taught about the police growing up, and how are you going to pass that down to the next generation, to your son?
And so, all right, so like I said, I'm from Blytheville, so I don't want to say I never had a bad experience with the police in Blytheville. It was more like a, you know, it's the police, like, you know, it's the police. Everybody run, you know. It's just the thing that we were taught.
So that's what you were taught? You were taught to run from the police?
You were just taught, hey, there go the police. Even if you weren't necessarily doing anything wrong. And now that I look back on it, I'm like, oh, they were training me that early to, you know, be prepared to get away from the police if necessary. And I was, you know, as a kid, it's just, I'm thinking of it as a game. Oh, you know, like your parents run away so your parents don't catch you. And like I say, it wasn't until I got older that I really started to realize what they were trying to really convey to me. And a lot of people do know I was a cop here in Jonesboro for a couple of years. And part of the reason for me doing that, it was because there was always this tension between the African American community and the police. And so I was like, man, I can help bridge that gap. And once I became a cop, I realized how actually big of a gap it was.
Really?
Yeah.
Elaborate on that a little bit.
Man, you think, or you would think, hey, that most African Americans would be happy to see an African American police officer. But that title of police officer has been stained so bad that they don't even care if you're black. I can't tell you. Most of, I'm not even going to say that, I had a lot of resentment, especially that my first year of being an officer from black people. Because there was like, how could you portray us almost? You know, how could you choose that side?
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I didn't see it as that. I saw it as an opportunity to help the community and, you know, give back. But the more I worked, the more I realized that, man, this relationship between African American community and the police are, dude, it's, at times I felt it was beyond repair. But you know, that's just like your low point, you know, when you hit that point where you're like, you don't see a light at the end of the tunnel. Now that I'm older, I do think it is definitely a repairable relationship, but man, it's so many steps that we got to take first, you know. Like I said, I worked here in Jonesboro, and dude, majority of the officers here are great officers. They're here to do their job. They're here to protect. But every job, no matter if it's police officer, no matter if it's a cook at a restaurant or a factory worker, there's always that one person who either doesn't care about their job or doesn't have that value to give their best in the job. And that's where a lot of the bad relationships come. It comes from that person who doesn't respect the title that they've been given, and they abuse their power. And a lot of the times it's happening to the black community, and we're the prime targets of that outlash. And so it's like, whew, yeah, it's a tough conversation to even have now. And I haven't been a cop for almost 4 years now, 5 years.
Yeah.
And I still get some of the people like, hey, I can't believe you actually went and did that. I'm like, dude, it opened my eyes to a lot of things, and I'm glad I had the experience. But man, it like I said, it really let me know how big of a gap that actual how big that gap actually was between the relationship. And so to answer your question, dude, to have that conversation, especially with my son.
Yeah.
Being able to see both sides really helps. Like I said, I know the gist of a little bit more than what the average person knows. I know the gist of what a police encounter should be like. And, dude, I'm still worried now thinking about it. I know what the cops are going to look for, and I know what to tell my son not to do. But I've also seen situations where the person did everything right and they were still, racially profiled.
Yeah. So what do you do in that type of situation where people are that are in a position of power use it to their advantage, to where it's almost like they're abusing it? Like, what do you do?
Man, the first thing is the people who are there actually doing their job have to realize that it's happening, and they have to be the ones to stand up, because, we as a Black community, we can stand up all day, but unless we get the people who are actually working next to these people who are abusing their powers to say something, it's not going to change. So you have to, those good cops that I tell you, there are a bunch of good, the good cops heavily outweigh the bad cops. But the bad cops are the ones that's getting the media attention. Those are the ones that, all this stuff is happening with. And so the good cops have to step up. If you see, hey, man, that's not how we do it, you need to say something then and there. Don't let it go on. Don't let it grow. Catch it when it's, it's in its early stage,
Right.
If you see a cop racially profiling, it could be something as simple as, hey, that guy shouldn't have, that kind of car. Hey, why? Let's stop and ask some questions. Why do you think he shouldn't have that car? Is it because of the color of his skin? If so, dude, you need to really reconsider your career, because that's not what we do here. As a police officer, you're there to protect and serve.
Did you ever have to check somebody like that?
Unfortunately, yeah. It was a guy who came in a little bit after me, and I don't think he really meant anything by it. It was one of those things. He kind of said a slick comment, and at first I wasn't going to say anything, but later on we ended up having a conversation. I was like, hey, what you said there was kind of racial. And he was like, oh, no, I didn't mean it like that. And I can't even remember exactly what he said. I just remember how I felt. And I was just like, so is that what you see even when you look at me? I'm your coworker. I work next to you every day. We're out there, supposed to be protecting each other, having each other's back. And you said something, that I consider racial, and you saw nothing wrong with it. So I was like, we had that conversation. I'm like, dude, where is your mindset at? How do you really feel? Is this how you feel about all Black people? Is this something that you just heard and you're repeating? Whatever the case may be, we need to cut that out now. And he was real accepting and open to the conversation. And like I said, I can't remember exactly what he said, but I still to this day remember how I felt when he said it. And it was just kind of like a shock. When I was a cop, I didn't look at anybody any differently because of their skin. I looked at the facts. If you stole, you stole. I didn't care if you were Black, white, Mexican, red, orange, purple, green. If you stole, you went to jail. That's how it went. If you didn't do anything wrong, okay, have a nice day. Sorry for the inconvenience. I tried to be courteous with everybody. I didn't care who you were. And some officers didn't do that. Like I said, it's not the majority. I really want people to understand that. It is not the majority of officers. It's a very small percentage. But the good officers have to stand up, and they have to say something when they first see something in order for change to happen.
So what do you think needs to be done so that you can take your biases out of being a police officer?
So I think, one, we need to do a lot more training. In the United States in general, it doesn't take much to be an officer. Have a high school diploma, be over the age of 21, don't have any felonies or anything like that, and pretty much you qualify to be an officer. of course you go through some training, but you're literally being put over the general population. You're being put in charge of protecting the general population. I feel like that should be up there with the job qualification of a doctor or a lawyer. Like, you need to go through some schooling. You need to really understand what you're getting into. And I feel like that's the very first step that needs to be taken. It needs to be some more qualification. It needs to be some more background. Like, really need to look at who is being hired as police officers.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I've got this. I've posed this question to a few people, and everyone pretty much keeps saying the same thing: a little bit more training, and then you will get quality police officers in there if you weed out a little bit more of the people that can not get a felony, graduate high school, and 21. So, man, that's crazy. I didn't even realize that was the basic.
That is the basic. I mean,
bar.
That's the bar minimum. Like I said, once you get hired, most agencies will send you to a police academy where they kind of teach you the basics, and that's all it is. They teach you the basics of being a police officer. A lot of what you learn of being a police officer, you learn actually on the job while you're training or while you're working.
Yeah.
So, it's real intense, a lot of information packed into a little bit of time, and then you're thrown to the wolves.
Yeah.
And so I feel like if we could, even extend that time, give a little bit more training, so people understand exactly what they're getting into, that'll cut out a lot of this tension that's with the police officers.
Yeah. And I completely agree. I completely forgot that you were a police officer. So, you definitely have a unique perspective, which is what this show is all about. Just deep diving into different perspectives and just education, man. Just educating people, letting people see what we go through as a Black community. And, man, that's just... This has been a really powerful conversation, and I'm taking a lot away from it. Before we wrap up here, is there anything else that you wanted to say about this entire topic before we wrap up?
Man, like I said earlier, the majority of police officers are good guys, good women. They're doing their job. It's a small percentage that we're trying to weed out, and I just want people to realize that both sides, Black and white, it's not all white. All white officers are not out to get Black people.
Yeah.
If you break the law, you break the law. You have to deal with the consequences just like anyone else. So, and then also, if you have children, prepare them now while they're young. Start thinking about now how you're going to have those conversations, because before you know it, they're going to be the ones who are having to deal with this. And like I said, you can't always be there holding their hand. So you want to prepare them as much as possible and hope, that the situation changes. But, you need to prepare them for now.
JT, I just want to take the time to thank you for being on the show, man.
Man, my pleasure. I have enjoyed every last second of it.
Yeah, so we're definitely going to have to do a follow-up episode to talk about your entrepreneurial things that you've had going on for sure. So we will be talking in the future, my brother.
Good times, man.
Yeah, this has been another episode of the Clever Angle Podcast, the Voicing the Silence series. If you enjoy this, go ahead and follow us over on Instagram. We have a Facebook page at the Clever Angle on all social media handles. I just want to give a shout out to everyone that's been supporting the show, listening, liking the Facebook post, liking the Instagram post. It means a lot, and it goes a long way towards just allowing this show to grow and to be exactly what I wanted it to be. And that's just an education platform where we can sit down and have real conversations with real people and just see different perspectives that you might not have known if you didn't tune in. So thank you. You guys have a blessed week, and peace.